Hello, and welcome back to the Soul-u-tions podcast. My name is Tara Simkins, and I'm your host. In the previous episode, I started sharing with you a list of 10 lessons from a 92-year-old former high school guidance counselor that she says she wishes someone had told her about in her 50s and 60s. I have been obsessed with her message since I heard it, and I wanted to share these lessons with you with my take on it as a person who's 59, but also building relevancy for you if you are in your 30s and in your 40s and in your early 50s. So if you haven't listened to the previous episode, after you listen to this one, don't worry, it should come up in your queue, and make sure you listen to that. But first, listen to the introduction and I'll meet you on the other side.
Einstein said, "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them." Most everyone in the world is solving their problems the wrong way. Our problems come from our thinking, and we can solve them with our thinking. So, whether you're at your lowest, just trying to grow, or whether you are trying to sustain growth over your lifetime, join us as we push the boundaries of our current thinking and redefine how we find Soul-u-tions.
The hope and the strength and the love and the smiles and the laughter of friends and family. Add it up, you'll find no limit to the possibilities.
Well, I just finished recording for you that previous podcast episode. And I was talking to Ethan, my podcast producer over there, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, Tara, I am even seeing how, like, on the friendship thing and that point that you made about friendship, I'm even seeing how these things are starting to happen with people who are 30 and how the effort that you need to make and just reaching out to friends all the time to keep things alive." So I so appreciate it, Ethan, and I'm hoping he's going to start actually chiming in on some things. We may be doing some outtakes, outros on the end, and have some little extra tidbits for you because he's just wise beyond his years. Okay, so we're picking up with the third lesson, and this is. I know you're not going to like this one, and I truly I know that you are going to be so uncomfortable with what I have to say that you might even be tempted to just stop listening to this podcast. And what I want to just ask you to do is just notice if you are uncomfortable with what I'm getting ready to share with you. And if you are uncomfortable, I want you to think of this as heavy lifting exercise, like lifting those heavy weights for just practicing feeling uncomfortable, staying present with the discomfort, taking a deep breath with your hand over your heart, and exhaling. Because what I want you to know is getting good at being uncomfortable is one of these super skills that every successful person needs to have. Period. The end. It's just what you need to have. So this conversation may be a little out of your comfort zone. And I just want you to just say, okay, if it is, I'm just going to let this be my getting out of my comfort zone challenge for the day. Lesson number 3, have the conversations about death and money now while you can still have them. Have the conversations about death and money now while you can still have them. start having these conversations as early as you can. As early as you can. We all avoid conversations about money and about death. Why do we avoid those conversations? Well, because in polite society, we're taught you don't talk about those kind of things in polite society. People would rather not have the conversations because it makes them uncomfortable. The problem with that is that then you go about your life never developing the skill set of how to have these conversations, how to kind of feel uncomfortable while you're having the conversations and continuing the conversations. And then what happens? You're in a crisis and you need to handle and navigate the crisis. And you have a bunch of questions that nobody wants to talk about. But guess what? Now you don't have the luxury of avoiding them because you actually have to address them. And it's the last thing you want to be doing is guessing about things like when your parents pass away. And the last thing you want to do when you're dealing with that loss is finding out there's not enough money to pay for the funeral, or finding out, oh my gosh, if only I had known, I could have saved them all these estate taxes. They passed their home down to me and it could have been in a trust, but it wasn't in a trust. So now I'm going to have to pay as the heir the capital gains taxes on it. You know, I'm a former lawyer, so I think about these kind of things, but it's true. And I remember when I was, just had children, one of the tax and estate lawyers came to me in my office and he says, Tara, you need a will before your kids are born. I was, pregnant. I didn't want to talk about a will. I was like, oh my gosh, all those people who talk about manifesting, like if I even get a will, am I introducing, the angel of death into our lives? Well, I'll be taken from them. I mean, we think about these crazy things, right? But in the state of Georgia, you set out like, who's going to have custody of your children when you die? And if you don't have a will, guess who decides who has custody of your little children? The state decides that. A judge decides that. Guess who doesn't decide that? Your parents who've been taking care of them for so long, or your sister, or the person who isn't in your family, but is your best friend and knows that you definitely don't want your sister or your parents to have your kids. And so we really need to talk about these things with one another, to share these things. And I know you'd much rather pay for a vacation or send your kids to camp than you would paying a lawyer to write a really great will for you or a really great estate plan for you. But what I want you to know is what you really would rather is to be able to think through and plan out what you know would be in the best interest of your children rather than the state or a judge guessing at what that would be. So having the conversations about death and money now while you still can have these. And, don't leave a mess for people who love you to clean up. I'm thinking about this a lot, being 59, my children, my oldest is 26, out of the house and working, and then the younger two, Christopher and Brennan, are graduating from college this year, and they're getting their jobs. And I'm thinking about it because, hello, I'm in the sandwich generation, sandwiched between the reality of having aging parents and having these kids. And I am, Turner and I, we've already lost my father. And, the good Lord willing, we'll have our, my mother and his parents for many, 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 many more years. But there's so much to be organized and to be done. And even if someone has done the organization for you, if they haven't shared the information with you, there are things that wake you up in the middle of the night, things that you fret over, things that you don't want to ask because you don't want to appear to I don't know, be thinking more about when they're gone than when they're here. But what you really don't want is to leave your kids with a mess to clean up, or to leave yourself with a mess to clean up that you at this stage could have worked through while you're not dealing with the crisis of working through. So if you haven't had these conversations yet, what I want you to do is I want you to put this on your to-do list, to find a time to have not all of the conversations, but just the first conversation. And that first conversation can be with your spouse or your partner or a sibling or a parent. It doesn't matter who you choose, but just have your first conversation. Or it could be with your friend who's a lawyer. And if you really don't know how to have these conversations, then I want to make sure that you are on my mailing list. And all you have to do is go to Tara, T-A-R-A .Simkins. No, is that it? No, Tara at tarasimkins.com. Sorry, I'm like, what's my email address? No, that's my email address, Tara at tarasimkins.com. And then my website is tarasimkins.com, and you can get on my email list there. Either email me or go there. It doesn't matter, whatever is easiest for you. I've probably totally confused you about that. Or you can follow me on Instagram at Soul-Shine Labs and get on the wait list for the Soul-Shine Labs, because I'll teach you how to have these conversations with all the people in your life. I'll teach you how to have difficult conversations, necessary conversations, how to feel uncomfortable and have the conversations anyway. It will be one of the greatest gifts you can ever give yourself. All right. Number 4, I don't think they're going to like this one either, but I'm just going to say it because I just went through this again when I went through my empty nesting and I stopped practicing law. But retirement will not save you. It will expose you. There are going to be certain shifts in your life, things that you've been looking forward to, like retirement, right? Like the time where your kids are gone from your house, like the time that you don't have to show up and do the dirty job anymore, whatever that is. And you're going to get there. And instead of saving you from all the problems that you had when you were in the job, it's going to expose you on a level that you never expected. What am I talking about here? There is an identity loss that accompanies things like retirement and your children flying the nest. Hopefully they're not fleeing and they're flying, but there is an identity shift when you pivot from doing something that everybody knows you as the go-to person for, and you start something new. For me, that pivot of deciding I was no longer going to practice law and I was going to go 100% into being a life coach, I did that at about the age of 51. I made that pivot. I'd been practicing law for over 25 years at that time. That pivot happened to collide at the same time that my oldest was graduating high school and entering college. And my younger two were just 2 years behind him. There was going to be no caboose in my house. It was going to be a fast transition. And I was at such a loss of, who am I? Who am I if I'm not a lawyer? Who am I if I'm not actively mothering and tending to all these activities of these kids at home? Who am I if I am not that? What this 92-year-old former high school guidance counselor shared was she had all those years been looking forward to her retirement at age 75. And what she didn't expect was the identity loss that she was going to experience at the age of 75. What I so deeply appreciated in her sharing that was that she said she spent the next 3 years working through that loss in her identity. And slowly and surely, she started filling her time again with things that she liked to do, new things like taking a watercolor class or, joining a bridge club, just different things that she had not had the time to do before. And then all of a sudden, with all this freer time, unstructured time, I mean, truly think about it. You've been going someplace to the same place. For me, it had only been 25 years that I'd been going to that same place. For this woman, it had been 55 years where she went to the same high school and the same school schedule, get there at 7, go through a full school schedule, leave around 3:30 or 4 for 5 days a week for 55 years. And then all of a sudden she wakes up on day 1 of retirement and she's got nowhere to go. And nobody's coming into her office or interrupting her day or asking her opinion on things. It's really quiet. What is she going to do with all that time? So truly, the thing to expect and how do you prepare for that identity shift? It's what I wish I had known in my 40s when I made that shift from lawyer to life coach and from mom with all the birds in the nest to mom on the road with all the birds out of the nest, is that life is going to be very, very different. And if everything I think about myself, my entire identity and sense of self-worth is wrapped up in what I do in those jobs, when those jobs are gone, I am going to have to do the work of figuring out who I am outside of those jobs. That work is not for the weak. That is really deep and hard work. Father Richard Rohr calls it falling upward. Like you really do feel like you're untethered, but it's the invitation to fall upward and to find out who you are beyond all those things. Having heard what this 92-year-old former high school counselor had to share was she learned that lesson at 75. I'm so glad I got to learn that lesson at 51. And now I'll know that there'll become another point where I will have to learn that lesson again. It might be, at 75, maybe when I retire from coaching. But what I've done is I've started to build the skill set of putting structures and other things in my life, hobbies that I never allowed myself to have as a lawyer. But what I've also done is the deeper work of knowing who I am, knowing what I am, knowing how I serve, the spiritual work of knowing that my value is not based on the things that I do, as our culture likes to tell us, but I am just inherently worthy because the good Lord breathed life into my lungs and I am on planet Earth right now, alive. Like, it's such a big shift to really accept the grace of that and the truth of that. And I'm sure I'm going to have to go through it on deeper and deeper levels. But I will have like my sea legs and some strength, and it will be in a different way while I'll like, oh yeah, I'll just get to know this on a larger scale of what that sense of the gift of my life and my worth is outside of that. All right, so next time we're going to go into the next 2 great pieces of advice that I learned from this amazing woman who was willing to share her points with the channel Old versus Young on YouTube. You might want to follow them. I thought that was really cool. And also, speaking of following, please make sure that you are following at Soul-u-tions Labs on Instagram and that you are subscribed to this podcast, because I have more gems for you. And the next one, it's not going to be as rough as this segment. It's not going to be uncomfortable. And by the way, yay you. This was your Get Out of Your Comfort Zone challenge today and listening to today's episode. And make sure that you share this with someone you love. What greater gift could you give to someone by helping them prepare for some of the uncomfortable realities that are waiting for them in their future? Until next time, please know that I greatly appreciate you subscribing and listening and sharing this podcast, and that you're here. I look forward to sharing the next lesson.
'Cause I ain't done living the life I'm meant to lead. And I ain't done loving the ones who cared for me. The hope and the strength and the love and the smiles and the laughter of friends and family. Add it up, you'll find no limit to the possibilities. The left and the right and some faith